It's episode 42 of Screen Preach. So welcome back. And wow, I put this way too low. Here we go. That's better. Welcome back. If you've never been here before, or listened before, welcome. So what's going on? Dude, what a week in the news. What a week on Disney Plus. WandaVision. Yeah, dude, they're just dragging it though. They're hyped. Dude, they're teasing and teasing and teasing. Like they answer something a little bit, and then we're still like, well, but what? But how did this? But who? But why? And why did how? And how and why and why and how? Like this every week. But yeah, I'm very excited to talk about episode 7. But before we do that, I'll do a quick check in on what I've been watching. Of course, you can always let me know what you're watching. Of course, you can always try and guess the movie quote, and I'll actually send you a free shirt if you get it right. You know, it's like the whole being part of the show thing that we do here at Screen Preach. Whatever. I actually don't care. I don't do it for you guys, remember? I make it all fun for me regardless. And Doja's got new bling on. Right, Doja? The newest? The newest? You have the newest? How's your new collar? Fly? Fly? Fuck! Alright. Besides WandaVision, obviously, still on Daredevil, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Punisher, Defenders, trying to find a new way to rewatch that in like a more cohesive order. Like some of them you can do at the same time, some of them you can't. Like I screwed up and I was watching Daredevil 2 and Iron Fist 1 at the same time, and it doesn't work. You got Claire popping in an Iron Fist and saying how she was attacked by the Hand and ninjas in her hospital, and you got Danny talking about how Karen is part of the Bulletin, which in Daredevil all that stuff didn't happen yet. So I screwed that up. You gotta watch certain ones. You gotta watch before other ones. That's such a fun storyline. That whole thing, all the characters and their team up, and then their. It's just the way that arc should have ended was one more Defenders season, obviously, would have been the way to actually end it. But here's the thing. It ain't over. They just retain the rights to, officially, Marvel has the rights back. Jessica Jones and the Punisher, I think that was it. Those were the last two. They have all the Netflix characters back from Netflix. Expect to see them pop up because anything is possible now. If fucking Evan Peters Quicksilver's popping up in WandaVision, anything is possible now. Literally. They must. I mean, you gotta have Mike Coulter's Luke Cage and Tom Holland's Spider-Man interact. It's something that happens in the comics. I gotta see it. It's, just things that need to happen. And we know that they're gonna happen. That's so fun to watch. By the way, Iron Fist, totally underrated. Totally underrated, that show. Yeah, I understand. I understand the big complaint was that it was the perfect opportunity for Marvel to cast an Asian actor because of the kung fu thing, right? Except that Danny Rand in the comics is not Asian; he's white. So they were just being comic accurate. And now we got Shang-Chi coming out, and that is also comic accurate. Shang-Chi is Asian. I get it. Other people just didn't like Finn Jones playing the character. They didn't like. They didn't think he was good, but honestly, a lot of people just didn't give him a chance because they were pissed about that other shit. Totally underrated. I thoroughly enjoyed that first season of Iron Fist. The second one, whatever, but the second one though does something cool with Colleen, and Colleen's a great character. These are characters that need to come back into the fold. Enjoying watching those. But let's talk about WandaVision. Let's do an episode 7 recap of WandaVision. Spoiler full of spoilers. We got 3 big things to talk about in this episode. First of all, I should say this. I was lied to, or we all were, somewhere along the line this week. I saw that the last 3 episodes were going to be an hour long each. This was just another 30-minute episode, so I don't know what the fuck that... I don't know whoever said that. I don't know where you got that from. Maybe he meant the last 2, so I'm hoping the last 2 are an hour each. I prefer an hour, alright? I think we all prefer that the episodes be longer. But regardless, they are able to make the half hours fun and full and everything. We got 2 of our questions answered, while still not fully sure what's going on. And then we got a reveal that people are not happy with, but I'll break down why I think it's not an actual reveal yet. So real quick, right off the bat, we saw that Vision tried to get out last week, and that Darcy got sucked in. Darcy is in, and of course she had no idea who she was or what was going on. She was playing a character, right? Vision had to do his little mind thing, right? Bring Darcy back, and then Darcy realized what the fuck was going on, and her and Vision kind of had a little team-up thing here. Another fun thing, obviously, was this week was the more modern. We were in the 90s last week, now we're modern. So they took a Modern Family and The Office kind of approach to the modern version. We have like these... The name of the episode is Breaking the Fourth Wall. Literally, they talk to us in interview format like those shows would do. It was funny. There were some funny moments. Even the theme song for Wanda sounded a lot like The Office's theme song. No, like, obvious. Like, there was a... That was a clear, like, dude, you're pulling an Office on us with that one. That was funny. Yeah, so Vision... Darcy kind of just fills him in a little bit on what's going on. Like, yeah, you died, and, like... Well, I mean, Wanda killed you, but you asked her to do it, and then, like... and then you died again. Because the big guy, the big bad guy, like, reversed time and then killed you again. Like, all that shit. And then... But the big stuff happened, and we'll talk about it. It's amazing how accurate some of the fan theories actually have been. Someone predicted Evan Peters' Quicksilver would show up, and then he showed up. And then, again, Agnes, who we've all been suspecting there's something different about her than all the other people, because she seems to just kind of go with the flow with all the powers bullshit and everything, and she kind of has these weird moments. She's been having these strange moments throughout the season here. So we knew there was something up, and then they finally revealed to us that she's actually Agatha Harkness, who in the comics is quite an interesting figure. In the comics, she's actually revealed to be like one of the first witches from the Salem witch trials. Like, she's old, like she's very old, and she uses magic. She draws energy from like the multiverse and other dimensions and the space, and like she manipulates those things by using magical spells. Like, that's her powers are basically like real magic, right? Probably more similar to Doctor Strange than to Wanda. So it'll be interesting because Wanda probably has to learn how to control this new power she has. The fact that she's able to do what she did at all this season is probably because of Agatha manipulating her. Because now we figure out that not everything has been Wanda, and that in fact Wanda's mind has been kind of fucked with by Agatha. Here's the thing, motives. Why is Agatha doing this at all? Another thing, in the comics, Agatha is an ally, not a villain. She actually mentors Wanda into using her powers more in a more spell-ish way, instead of however she's been currently doing it. And also, Agatha's like the protector of Franklin Richards, the son of Reed Richards and Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four. She is an ally in the comics. So why is she a villain in this? Maybe it has something to do with... Maybe it's a revenge thing. Maybe she was close to somebody who died in Lagos or in Sokovia or something. There's maybe a reason. We'll figure it out, and hopefully the next couple episodes, only 2 episodes left. And we're officially a month away from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, by the way. Can't wait. So yeah, it was weird, really creepy shit with that. She was behind Quicksilver showing up. She was behind kind of all the little sabotaging things that have been going on. But also her powers are pretty intense, and it's possible Agatha's even under the control of someone even worse. But wouldn't that be a lot of fucking hooey-fooey shit to keep doing that?
that was a cool thing that wasn't that surprising because we knew something was up with Agnes. But the fact that also Billy and Tommy kind of just disappeared there at the end of the episode, it's probably because they're not real. They might actually not be real, and Wanda's gonna have to grapple with that on top of everything else she's been through. But the bigger thing, the more exciting thing for me anyway, I love when we have a new player, a new hero join the fray. And we have a new hero joining the fray. Last week they teased it, or might have been the week before. Her cells are molecularly getting changed by going through the hex. I think it's when you go through it that it fucks with your cells. If you're already in it when it was made, like that's why all the other people in there, why are they not getting powers? Because maybe they were already in it when she, you know, it's when you go through it. I think that it fucks with your. I don't know. I'm just predicting. But she got her superpowers officially. A character who's big in the comics, and she got her. We see how she got her superpowers in this episode. Pretty cool. We didn't see fully her. We didn't see her use them yet. But we got a little taste. It'll be cool when we see it in full swing. Probably next week or the week after. Don't forget that Monica is a key main character in Captain Marvel 2. And now that she has her powers, there's going to be a whole dynamic there. Now, in the comics, Monica has had a few different titles, superhero titles. Spectrum. She was even Captain Marvel at one point. And then Photon. Now, people are wondering, what is she going to take on first in the MCU? They hinted at it. They hinted at it. In an early episode, they showed a picture of her mother, Maria, on a wall. And Maria Rambeau's nickname was Photon. Okay? That's going to be Monica's moniker. That's going to be Monica's moniker. First. Is Photon. Just like, Carol's nickname was Avenger. And we know who used that title. Photon will be her superhero name probably first. That was so cool. That was the coolest thing that happened this week, to see Monica finally get her powers, which we knew was coming. If you followed things, you knew it was coming. If you don't follow things, it's cool too. It's like, oh shit, she's got powers now too. Fuck. And the other little thing to bring up, obviously, is people think that the aerospace engineer was revealed this week. I don't. Not 100% anyway. Yes, the people that Monica and Wu meet up with are technically the contacts that Monica was talking to the whole time, but did we actually meet the aerospace engineer in charge of that group of people? I don't think so. So there's more to that reveal. It's either Reed Richards or it's... there's another character that seems even more fit to be the aerospace engineer. And I think it's a character who goes on to become Monica's husband in the comics. He's also got superpowers. I forget his name, though. But that's more likely who it is. I still think that reveal is coming. And then don't forget, a big reveal should be at the end. There should be an Avenger-level character popping into the show. But yeah, they have set the stage here for the final 2 episodes, and it was fun and exciting to watch. There's just some weird, creepy, witchy stuff going on with Agatha Harkness in that little dungeon that she has. How much has she really been controlling? How much has Wanda been controlling? It's just questions now still. We still want to know. But nonetheless, fun episode. Definitely go check it out if you haven't yet. And that is my recap. So we'll get into the news of the week. And to kick off the news of the week, I'm going to try something new. I haven't watched them more. There were a lot of trailers. There were 3 trailers, right, that were interesting. I haven't watched the Mortal Kombat trailer yet. So let's watch it right now. And I'll kind of break it. I'll kind of give my opinion on it. Let's do that. I'm hoping I can get away with this on YouTube. And if the whole episode kind of gets blocked out or whatever happens, it's because of this. And, well, no, I can't do this anymore. But let's watch the Mortal Kombat trailer. shall we?
First learned about this 7 years ago. On a mission in Brazil to capture a wanted fugitive. When we got there, it tore through our unit in seconds. The target had superhuman abilities. It had the same marking you do, Cole.
It's a birthmark.
What do you mean?
He was born with it.
It's not a birthmark, Cole. It means you've been chosen.
Throughout history, different cultures all over the world reference a great tournament of champions. That dragon marking? I think it's an invitation to fight for something known. As Mortal Kombat.
These are your champions.
I'm Sonya. That's Kano.
I'm Liu Kang.
Name's Jax.
Kung Lao. Lord Raiden. The fate of Earth is in our hands.
No matter how many of my people you put in the ground, we will not fail. Kill them.
I am Sub-Zero. Get over here!
Kano wins. You fucking beauty.
Whoa. All right. First things first. It's if anything, if nothing else, it'll be very action packed. And if you love action and like great choreography, yeah, we're gonna have quite a show here. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. April 16th, by the way, on HBO Max and in theaters, so you can watch it right away. That'll be cool. Here's the thing too. I like how you kind of need like a protagonist, right? I don't know. Here's the thing. I don't know. I played Mortal Kombat a little bit, but I don't know. Like, I don't have a history of it, so I can't give you like a full like rundown of like. I don't know if there was a protagonist, like a hero in the games, but they clearly made Cole he seems to be like the main character here. So you're gonna kind of, which you have to take that approach with a movie version, with an adaptation of a game to a movie. I'm hoping that's another thing. Games to movies don't work. They always seem to not work. I hope this one does. It looks really like a cool movie, man. It really does. But yeah, so you're gonna be rooting for him, for Cole, probably. You're gonna want him to win the tournament, right? Another cool thing, the fatalities seem to be like involved. They seem to be a key part of the film version, which they need to. In the game, they are, and they made that also relevant here. The fatalities, which is cool too. It just looks like a lot of it'll be a fun ride for 2 hours, you know. So that's exciting. Adding trailers to the show is a whole nother element that I've been wanting to add, and I found a way to do it. I just hope that I can do it, like I'm allowed to do it. That's a good way to kick off the news of the week. Let's get into it. We had a lot of stuff, and I'll go through it as quickly as possible so we can get to our movie. DC Universe casted its Supergirl, and they casted actress Sasha Calle from The Young and the Restless. She will be playing Supergirl, and she will be in The Flash. So The Flash now has The Flash, it has Supergirl in it, and it has 2 Batmans in it. It has Ben Affleck's Batman and Michael Keaton's Batman, all in the same movie. I don't know about DC and the direction they're going. We'll see, okay? It may just still be a shitty ride, you know? I don't know. But we'll see how this Zack Snyder cut is, too. Justice League, another trailer that came out this week. I didn't really... I mean, I watched it because I posted it, but I didn't really care. You don't need to watch that trailer. We've seen the first movie, and a lot of the footage is the same. I'll just watch the cut when it comes out. I don't need to see a trailer. Edgar Wright is in talks to direct a Stephen King film called The Running Man. Stephen King book adaptation, The Running Man, for Paramount. Edgar Wright's a great filmmaker. He did Baby Driver. He was supposed to do Ant-Man, and I heard he's on speaking terms again with Kevin Feige of Marvel, so maybe he'll do something for Marvel soon. But yeah, there was actually some serious Stephen King news here. Stephen King, J.J. Abrams are developing an anthology series for Tiny Horrors, another one based on a Stephen King book, for HBO Max. J.J. Abrams signed a new deal with HBO Max. He's doing all kinds of content. Like a big thing he's doing. J.J. Abrams, he's working on a Constantine reboot for HBO Max. Constantine has had a show on the CW, and it had a movie starring Keanu Reeves. Now it'll have a new series on HBO Max, which seems like that should be fun. J.J. Abrams involved. The cast of James Gunn's Peacemaker series, starring John Cena, has been rounded out, so that it has a full cast. I'm not going to run down the names because I don't really know many of the actors, but that's more movement on that show. Again, HBO Max. HBO Max and Disney Plus seem like the two that will be like top tier. I saw something that like by 2026, Disney Plus will have more subscriptions than Netflix, based on the content they have coming out. Marvel and Star Wars and Pixar and Disney and all this stuff. And HBO Max is just everything else, man. Literally anything Warner Brothers related. It's insane what HBO Max has become already and will continue to become. Migos rapper Quavo is making his feature film debut with Robert De Niro and John Malkovich in a film called Wash Me. What is this thing? Get out of my screen. Wash Me in the River is the name of the movie. Alright, Quavo, let's see what you got. Let's see your acting chops. I posted this. Danny Elfman is confirmed to be scoring Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Danny Elfman just adds another element to that old school Spider-Man trilogy feel. Okay, we got the director of the Spider-Man trilogy starring Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi, directing the Doctor Strange sequel, and we got the composer of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy, Danny Elfman, composing the sequel to Doctor Strange. So that's cool, obviously. Jesse Plemons joins Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. Jesse Plemons, this will be the second time he's worked with Scorsese, who was in The Irishman, and he's a great talent that we've seen in a lot of actually crime-related stuff, Black Mass, Breaking Bad. So this will be cool. This is not crime-related, by the way. I don't know why. It's just Martin Scorsese. There's a crime element to it, I think, like a murder element to it or something. But, that is more movement on another film by my favorite director, so obviously. I saw this, too. They're doing a Wizard of Oz remake, and I don't know how I feel about it. There's just some things you don't remake. There's just some things that you don't remake. And by the way, the screenwriter, Herman Mankiewicz, who we will talk about today, because the film we're going to talk about today is based on him. I think he had a part in The Wizard of Oz. Like, he played a part in writing The Wizard of Oz. And it's crazy, too, because this movie is about him, and his brother Joe's in it. And Herman was, like, known for making Citizen Kane and a couple other films, but his career actually wasn't much compared to what his brother goes on to do. His brother Joe actually becomes quite the filmmaker, the screenwriter. He wins 4 Oscars. He's done films like Julius Caesar, All About Eve. The guy is a talent, and but I don't know why I'm talking about that yet. We'll get to that. But The Wizard of Oz, I don't think you remake that. I just don't see it. Like, you don't, some classics you just don't touch. Jackass 4, it turns out Bam Margera was cut from it. How can you have Bam Margera cut from it? I guess because he's going through some shit, maybe addiction or something, and the team's trying to get him recovery and stuff. But he's out of the movie, I guess. And considering how long we wait for Jackass movies, it'll suck to not have certain people in it. Obviously, rest in peace to... that's fucked up that I forget his name right now. The one who tragically died in a car accident. He's not going to be in it. And now Bam's not going to be in it. I don't know. Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy is still a go at Lucasfilm. People have been wondering if that's still happening. Turns out it's still happening. I like his take on the Star Wars universe. I like The Last Jedi. So I'm very excited for that trilogy. My big question with WandaVision, though, and something else I forgot to bring up, is Darcy going to have powers? Is Marvel going to pull a move here where they actually create a superhero from scratch in the cinematic universe? A new superhero that's not in the comics that they created in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Are they going to give Darcy powers and she becomes a superhero? Just food for thought. Because she was sucked into it, and she went through it and everything. So we'll see about that. Mission Impossible 7 and 8 are no longer filming back-to-back. They were, but now they are no longer filming back-to-back. Probably because of COVID. They just decided to break it up again. Although I don't know. Zack Snyder's Justice League trailer was the first thing that I saw this week. And that comes out very soon. In March. But let's talk about our film, because it's a film that after I watched it, it's a film that while I was watching it, I was like, okay, this is okay, it's good, but it was sitting with me a lot after I watched it, like it was growing on me, just because I'm such a film geek, and I love classics, and I love Citizen Kane, and just this story is great to know about how Citizen Kane came, the whole inspiration for that movie came to be. And it really had a lot to do with Mankiewicz, more than Orson Welles. And of course, dude, the writer is the guy at the start of it all, but just didn't realize what kind of mind this man had. He was such a talent, but he was also, so full of himself, so destructive in his ways too, to the people around him and to himself. So it was really, really interesting. And Gary Oldman is just quite a presence on screen. There's one line that he says in the movie that kind of sums up the whole theme, I think, and it's when he's always joking. Just he's got verbal diarrhea, Mank. He's constantly just saying whatever comes to mind, right? So he's this defense mechanism he has, probably because of his insecurities, is he just uses humor for everything. And he was joking when he said this, but it kind of does sum up a lot of what the film plays with. What kind of man, what kind of person you are, right? He says, socialism, you share the wealth, and communism, you share the poverty. And I thought that was such an interesting way of looking at it, because this movie really becomes about Mank versus William Randolph Hearst. And William Randolph Hearst is the guy that Mankiewicz based Charles Kane on in Citizen Kane. And to see what was happening in reality during that time, and how it inspired Mank to write the film, was very interesting. Something that while you're watching it, maybe you're getting a little bored with it at first, but then after you finish the movie, and that final climactic scene and everything, like you're thinking about it. I found myself thinking about it constantly. Everything about right off the bat with the writing too, with Jack Fincher. Here's a guy who is an old-time screenwriter who's been dead. He died in 2003. But David Fincher, the director, took that script and made the movie that Jack had intended to make. This story about Mankiewicz, this autobiography about Mankiewicz that Jack Fincher wrote. David Fincher, the director, no relation. At least, I checked. I looked and looked and looked. I didn't see a relation. I don't think there's a relation. David Fincher took that movie that he wrote, made this movie. I'm sure there were some tweaks maybe, but for the most part, I think it's what Fincher wrote. That was really interesting. That was like that would have been a cool fun fact for this movie, you know, if this were the fun fact of the week or something. But it's not. It's the main topic. Topical. The film, and then everything about the film tried to actually honor what Jack Fincher, the era of Fincher, but also Jack Fincher, but also the era of Citizen Kane, the era of when Herman Mankiewicz was writing movies. Everything about it, dude. This movie was made to be like an old movie, and I loved it. The film is in black and white. There are even effects, filters, cuts, and fades that all give that old film reel look of the 40s, right? Even more than that, though, the sound mixing in particular was done this certain way to make it sound like 1940s films. I loved that. The fades were the best. The fades to black to transition in between the scenes. It's so 40s. That's so old school. And we had those little like film reel like marks from the way that the reel would have been cut a certain way. Sometimes you get those little like blips. I loved that stuff. Those little effects were so important to making this style that Fincher was trying to express, like just kind of jump off the screen at us. This is an old movie that we're getting today. Isn't that fucking? I mean, it was just. But also the contrast is effective. We have an old style film, but it's also a rated R film. It's like a modern film, but an old film at the same time. That contrast was interesting. Some of the things depicted on screen here are also very much things that back in the 40s you would not have been able to show or say. Like fuck. Like just saying fuck. Like that comes up in and it feels like almost like you're breaking a law or something. You're watching this old movie and then they start cursing. It seems like you jumped into some kind of alternate reality for a minute. And I loved that whole thing. Stylistically, I loved the movie. Stylistically. But also structurally, the choice of like screenplay structure using it as a device, as a plot device. I love when filmmakers do that. I talked about it when Guy Ritchie did it in The Gentleman. Like he had an element of that to it. I loved that. And this too. The film is about a screenwriter, so having these transitions the way he did was so cool. It really was. He would have the screenplay slug lines to transition into the new scenes. It was like this awesome little meta quality, right? When you move on to any new scene when you're writing, you start with a slug line. It's a heading, like location, interior, exterior, and what time of day it is, right? And he actually visually put those onto the screen every time he was changing to a new scene. I loved it. It was to benefit the structure. It helped establish much easier what year we were in, because there was a whole flashback take. We were in one time for half the movie, and we were in another time for half the movie, intercutting back and forth. So every time it would come up on the screen, the heading, if it was back in the day, it would say in parentheses flashback right on the screen. It kind of benefited the film in that regard. You didn't actually have to you didn't have to show us that we were in another time. He would literally tell us we were in another time. Something that actually is it's almost against the rules again to do that. Like if you did that in any other regular movie, like it'd be like, don't tell us, show us. And so I love when filmmakers play with those. They play with the rules too. I love that. It's very creative. Yeah, the stakes are clear enough. Mank, here's a guy called upon to write for the 24-year-old prodigy Orson Welles. So back then, RKO was on the verge of bankruptcy, and they needed some kind of like wild card solution, and they hired the young prodigy of that time, Orson Welles, and gave him full control over a project. They said, "You do everything. You have final cut. You have just hire who you want, work with who you just do whatever you want. Make your movie, total fuck you, dude. Total autonomy. Is it autonomy? I'm gonna fucking look this up after and really beat myself up for it. Total autonomy over the project. I think that's the word." They gave him total control, everything. Mank was brought in to do the script by Orson. And so right away we have that contrast with this young up-and-comer, and we have a guy who's been in this business. And they're clashing. Although I thought that's the one thing about the movie I thought they'd do more of. They'd have them, like, kind of... Orson Welles was not really a character in this movie as much as I thought he would be. It's really more about Mank's relationship with William Randolph Hearst. William Randolph Hearst is who he based Charles Foster Kane on. And to see that whole drama play out was very interesting. Definitely a movie in and of it. It definitely was its own story, and that's why we have a movie about it. Now we have Citizen Kane, and we have Mank, and they kind of go hand in hand with each other if you think about it. I loved it. I didn't think the movie was amazing or anything, but I love the approach. I love some of the stylistic things. I love the performances, and I love what the story was about. At first, I didn't like what the story was about because I was expecting more of like the making of the movie and like Orson Mank working on the film and all that stuff. But it made more sense this way. Obviously, it was about the writing of the script, obviously, but also what inspired the writing of the script. But immediately we get conflict right off the bat, right? Orson is Orson, and he's a control freak in his own right, and he immediately cuts 30 days off of the deadline for Mank, right? He gives him 90 days to write the script, and then cuts 30 days off. No, I want it in 60 days. So we have that timeline's conflict, and then we have the flashback timeline's conflict, which is seeing Mank's relationship with Hearst and Davies, his girlfriend, wife character. That was, which of course went on to inspire the writing of the film. So we have the stakes set up pretty clear, nicely. And it's also a story about how Mank, as a Hollywood screenwriter, made movies. Like how he was making movies in general for other studios too. How RKO and other studios were declining and desperately needed options. It was after the Great Depression. People weren't going to the movies. It was a weird time for movies. Actually, and this movie ends up being very relevant for now and what the film industry is going through now. It's very similar. And if they can get out of it in the 40s and be back in theaters, I think we can get out of it today and be back in theaters too. The difference is they didn't have another option back then like TV and streaming. We have that now, so it's very different. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out. But it ends up being very relevant for today. Very reminiscent of what's going on. Now, of course, the story was about how Citizen Kane was made and what its making did to Herman. What it did to him mentally. What I didn't expect was that the story would focus so much on how Mank navigated the filmmaking community of the 30s, the years prior to Citizen Kane. These years were the years of the fallout of the Great Depression, the rise of Nazism, and World War II. It's always intriguing to see Hollywood in its most interesting years of crisis. Someone will make a movie about this era, and what we're going through with COVID, probably, and the film industry and how it was impacted, sure. There was, of course, a correlation between these events and why RKO turned to Welles in the first place. It's also why the story worked, showing Mank, someone who truly experienced these years of crisis, having to work with Orson, who was pretty new to the scene. So that contrast, like I said. and how those contrasting perspectives went on to put together a masterful work. All in all, it was a story about how Mank's experiences affected his mentality over the years. His alcoholism definitely had something to do with the environment he was engulfed in, this chaotic film industry. Kind of sucked his soul in a lot of ways, right? Sucked up his soul. But being an hour into the movie, the turning point had to then shift more towards Citizen Kane a little bit. We needed it to shift there, I think. It does and it doesn't. And that's probably because the making of the film was less interesting than what led up to the making of it. Again, like I said, at first I wasn't sure how I felt about that, and then I really liked it after it sat with me. Mank's making of Kane is what the story builds to, and the conflict between Mank and Hearst. The real conflict is introduced at the halfway point. Mank being cut out by Orson, right? This attempt to maintain no screen credit for Mank, because he agreed to it originally, but then now, of course, at this point in the film, he wants to be the person credited for this story about Hearst, because it's about Hearst, and he wants to be the guy that he wants Hearst to know. Obviously, he wanted him to know. It's not like they weren't going to know. They had to have known on some level anyway, but Mank wanted it to be the guy, and not to mention, it gets so personal for him. It's such a journey for him making this movie, and he's convinced that he's done. Like, he's washed up. It's just not good. He's convinced it's not good, and he's not good. And that's why my favorite scene in the movie too is when his brother Joe, who I said goes on to have quite a career himself, Joe says to him, "It's the greatest thing you've ever written," and it was, and it became. And it's still one of the greatest films ever made. But when people talk about Citizen Kane, they talk about why it was great on a technical level, on a visual level, right? Because of Orson and the directing and cinematography moves that he made. But nobody talks about the story being still so great. And it was. The story was just as great as anything else, I think. I love some of the dialogue. I quote some of the dialogue, and I think it's just all around just as much of an impactful story. It was just as impactful storytelling wise as it was technically, technical stuff. So this movie about Mank and not about Orson, awesome. But the performances overall just carried it. That finished it off and made it quite a film. Gary Oldman is a presence on the screen, and we want to follow him wherever he's going, doing whatever he's doing. Amanda Seyfried was also quite good. The real talent, besides the Oscar-worthy performance of Oldman, was actually Lily Collins, I thought, who played Rita. Her dynamic with Oldman, right? She plays his nurse, right? She was a great character. Second best, in my opinion, to Mank. So that's it. I mean, just real quick, real quick, how long did I fucking talk about that for? Where are we at? 43. It was good. It really was. Other thing that stood out to me, I noticed that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross scored this movie, not the thing that I thought I'd see them in next. After the things they've done, they did Gone Girl and Social Network. It's just their style is so not this, and they did fantastic. They captured the era and those types of movies with their score. So every element in this movie makes it feel like an old movie. Even the score. I also find it interesting that screenwriters have the most interesting life stories, it seems. Between Mank and Trumbo, it's worth noting that writers are, of course, where the inception of a film comes from. These minds are full of mystery and creativity. Don't ever underestimate them or underappreciate them. Don't underappreciate writers. It starts with writers, and it seems writers have more interesting stories to tell than directors. How many movies are there about directors? There's a couple, right? There's a few. But screenwriting stories are always interesting. because they focus on the writing, man, and it's something that gets brushed over a lot. I feel like not as much, which thank God. There's a whole thing going on right now, relevance-wise. This movie coming out now is great. It came out not now, but it came out like what, a month ago, 2 months ago. It just really, really interesting when we take up a writer's perspective. My overall rating of it is 8.3 out of 10. It's good, not great, but even as I'm sitting here talking about it, I might up that. It might be great. It might be great. But for now, that's probably where I'll keep it. Because it's not like it blew me away every moment of it. It wasn't great. It was good though. It was really good, and it's something that if you're a big movie person, for starters, definitely you need to watch it. But even if you're not, check it out because it is an interesting story about film history. It's just an historical moment in the cinema. I'd definitely be watching it again. It'll age well, probably. Overall, it almost had like this. There's almost like this noir feel to it sometimes, like a disillusioned and darkly comedic perspective. Mank's perspective that I found myself often appreciating. All the little stylistic choices, especially the music, really caught me. But overall, there's a lot about this film I still have to think about, which is why, in time, I will be watching it again. But for now, that is my assessment of it. So yeah, that is Mank. It is on Netflix now, and will be. So if you want to watch it, that's where you will find it. Let's do our fun fact of the week. I'm keeping it all about same kind of theme. I mentioned it. Let's talk about Trumbo. Did you know that in the 2015 film Trumbo, which is about screenwriter Dalton Trumbo during his blacklisted crisis, Bryan Cranston, who played Trumbo, improvised many of the scenes where Trumbo was writing alone at his desk or in the bathtub while the cameras rolled. Director Jay Roach said that Cranston also genuinely composed complete sentences on the page being written in those scenes. All improvisation, all by Cranston. Still one of the best actors of this latest decade. I think at one point in there I said director. What did I say? Director. I have to hear that. I said it like almost with like a Boston accent or something. The way I said director. Move on. Question of the week. Again, you know that everything thematically is the same on some level, but last week I asked, who's your favorite actor that defined a decade? This is an interesting one. And I said DiCaprio for my generation, and that Brando and Pacino are actually two of my other favorites. But here's what most people said. And of course, Brando's up there, right? But pretty much more or less who you would expect to see on that list. And like I said last week, De Niro should be. It'd be just the roles that he's had. But for me and my generation, it's always going to be DiCaprio. Like for right now, it's DiCaprio defined a generation, and he is. The question is, who's the best of all the actors that define a generation? I guess people still think it's Brando. And it's hard to argue that. Yeah. How about this? We'll keep it with 1940s. What is your favorite film from the 1940s? What's crazy is that I would normally pick some noir, like, I don't know, Double and Dead. Like, I'd pick some noir film because they were my favorites of the 40s, man. They were. I wish I should. For the 50s, it's obvious it's on the waterfront, but like for 40s, it was tough to actually make a pick on this. But I think The Third Man is my favorite 40s film. Like, no joke. The Third Man, when I saw that for the first time, I loved it. Like, everything. And Orson Welles, I have a thing with Orson Welles. I love Orson Welles movies. And The Third Man, he plays such like, his role is so huge in that movie. His presence is so important for the story, and yet he's not even in it as much as you would think he would be. Like, he's at the end, and it just, that is my favorite film of the 40s, I think. And it is noir. It's also foreign film. Like, it's foreign and noir. Like, interesting movie. Definitely the most obscure movie of the 40s, I think, in my opinion. And it is my favorite of the 40s. What is your favorite movie of the 1940s? Let's do a movie quote of the week this week. This one should be obvious. Think about what we've been talking about. You're right, Mr. Thatcher. I did lose $1 million last year. I expect to lose $1 million this year. I expect to lose $1 million next year. You know, Mr. Thatcher, at the rate of $1 million per year, I'd have to close this place down in 60 years. Name that movie. It's very, very obvious. I mean, come on. I did a quick one, dude, but it's one that I always loved. When he said it, I always laughed. It is a quotable movie. It is quotable. Yeah, that's our episode this week. Thank you for listening or for watching, whichever you prefer to do. Real quick, on Caught My Attention, I just want to bring this up. I read something somewhere that COVID cases are actually dropping drastically all of a sudden. I don't know how real this is, but I'm wondering what's the deal. Could it just be over? Could it be coming to an end now? It's just crazy when if you're in two different states, it's two different environments. Like, look at Florida and look at California. I'm in California, and it's like, but then Florida, they're just nomad, just freedom. Like, it's just so weird. This whole thing is still so weird, man. I hope it's over, because we don't even know how to fucking navigate this. We can't even agree on how to navigate this. So, that's a problem in and of itself. You can follow the show at Screen Preach. Follow me at DeBenji. Check out my website at themorgantistory.com for my scripts if you want to read them. Or if you want to option them or sell or buy them or whatever. And subscribe to BMS Studios. This is where you'll watch it on YouTube, is at BMS Studios. And that is also where you'll find my Patreon page. On my website is where you will find my Patreon page. But yeah, come back next week. I still have quite a list. I can't wait to talk about something else. And yeah, it's good. I wonder what I'm going to do next week. Figure it out. It is Oscar season too now. An interesting Oscar year. Everything's streaming for the most part. They'll still make the winner something from like the one thing that was in theaters or something, right? Like Nomadland is coming out now. I will watch it and talk about it, but that's getting all kinds of award notice. I think The Trial of the Chicago 7, in my opinion, was the best film in 2020. It was the best film I saw in 2020. Should win everything. But yeah, that's it. We're done. Thanks for watching and listening. Have a cinematic.